It's my family, Kay. It's not me.
As we mentioned in part 1, for years, Michael had been trying to avoid being involved with the family business. He looked down at his family's involvement in the mafia. However, what he would go through would completely change his perspective and give him an entirely new outlook on the world. After he had fully committed himself to the family, making his bones by taking out McCluskey and Virgil Sollozzo, he would escape to Sicily, where he would need to hide and not draw any attention, as the family back in New York was now embroiled in a ruthless battle. While in exile in Sicily, Michael begins to understand his father and what he went through, witnessing the ruthlessness of the environment he endured in Sicily. And it would lead him to want to never kneel down to anyone ever again. He began to understand the complexities of the Don, where he made his own laws, as the laws of others were not something he was willing to follow.
I worked my whole life. I don't apologize to take care of my family, and I refuse to be a fool, dancing on the string held by all those big shots.
But what had finally pushed Michael completely over the edge, the one event that completely flipped to the other side, was the death of Apollonia.
No! No, Apollonia!
Combined with the recent death of his older brother Sonny, this was enough for Michael to be firmly entrenched into the mafia ideology. He wanted revenge. This was the point of no return. But at this time, Michael still knew that the world he was entering was not exactly morally correct. However, he knew that if the family was to survive, he would need to transform it and lead into the legal world. He now respected the Don and understood his motives. However, he believed that his methods were outdated and needed to change.
Kay, my father's way of doing things is over. It's finished. Even he knows that.
Even though he would go on and actually use some of these methods, he still wanted to usher in a new era, where what he believed were more sophisticated and civilized methods were to be used. So Michael had good intentions. He genuinely wanted to protect the family, without losing any of its power and influence. However, as his power grew, he began to lose sight of his initial goal. Rather than save the family, he would be the one that destroyed it. He had become the exact person he worked his whole life not to become. He wanted to surpass Vito and take the family to a new level. And he wasn't left with an easy task. He had to somehow manage to reclaim the Corleone family name and reclaim its reputation as being synonymous with power. However, there was one problem. Vito was the primary reason the Corleone family was as powerful as it was. He individually held the strings of power and was able to control the criminal underworld for as long as he did. And why? Well, because he had the perfect balance of being both loved and feared. Michael, on the other hand, began with neither. As he progressed, he became more feared than loved, which can be advantageous but has its set of negatives. But to be fair, he didn't have much time to smoothly take over. He had to step up and do everything possible to fill the void that the powerful Don Vito once occupied. So he had an extremely difficult job, and some would say was even able to surpass Vito as a leader. He justified some of his worst decisions as being for the good of the family. Although he thought he was following the Don's teachings, he had lost the essence of what he was trying to teach him, what it means to work for the good of the family. After his recent experiences, he began realizing that the previous view of the world he wanted to believe was completely false. He had simply thought that the line between right and wrong was clear and was never crossed by individuals from either side. However, the experiences he went through gave him a new outlook on the world. Things weren't so black and white. There is no clear distinction between right and wrong, as now he only saw the family versus everyone else. But still, he thought he could correct his father's wrongs and redirect the family into the legal world, giving his children the chance for a life as far away as possible from what he was given by his father. A life where they won't need to experience the pain and suffering a life of crime forces upon all those who pursue it. He himself wanted to reshape his image as an honest businessman and community leader, throwing away the Mafia Don persona eventually. However, he knew at the moment being the Don was the only way he could achieve his aspirations. But unfortunately, it would not be as easy or as smooth as he wanted.
Think of what you once told me.
In
5 years, the Corleone family
is going to be
completely
completely
legitimate.
legitimate.
That was 7 years ago.
I know. I'm trying, Doc.
For years Michael had an idealistic view of the world. Similar to Bonacera of all people. They thought there was a clear line between good and evil. He saw that the law of the public was good, and the law of the Don as evil. However, nothing is ever that simple, as we all know this is not always the truth. But after Michael sets his first step into the world of crime, his view of what good and evil, what is right and what is wrong, slowly decayed. But the first instant of this was actually quite early on, when he had seen the corruption with his own eyes. This time he was the victim. This was when Michael realized that even the people who were meant to be so-called good could be corrupted or bought. As was the case of Captain McCluskey, who clearly was bought off, and had betrayed his role as upholding the law and protecting civilians. But Michael made a clear distinction between Vito and these other individuals. He understood that things went so black and white, and his father wasn't some tough guy preying on the weakness of others, rather a leader who did whatever he needed to survive, a leader responsible for many other people's lives. Yes, some of his methods weren't to Michael's taste, however he knew that was something he could work on.
Okay, my father's way of doing things is over. It's finished. Even he knows that.
But you're not like him, Michael. I thought you weren't going to become a man like your father. That's what you told me.
My father's no different than any other powerful man. Any man who's responsible for other people. Like a senator or a president.
Do you know how naive you sound?
Why?
Senators and presidents don't have men killed.
Oh. Who's being naive, Kay?
For Michael to reach his goal, he still needed to be the new godfather, ensuring that no one was going to come after his interests, and ensure that the criminal underworld was under his complete control. So he needed to become the perfect godfather, or as close as possible. And how was he to achieve this? Well, he would need to follow the principles proposed by the philosopher behind the mentality that inspired the mafia, the historically infamous Niccolo Machiavelli. If we look at what Niccolo Machiavelli stated, Michael would have been seen as the perfect prince or leader, or at least as close to it as possible. According to Machiavelli, the prince, or in this case the Don, must adhere to a different set of principles in order to lead. We will discuss all these principles in the next video, as The Godfather is filled with examples of how these principles were implemented. And so, with Michael now in position to take over the family, there was no way back. All the responsibilities Vito once held fell on him. And he would have to take on these tasks pretty much alone.
Michael Francis Rizzi, do you renounce Satan?
I do renounce him.
I know it was you, Fredo. You broke my heart. You broke my heart.
Up until this point, Michael had to only deal with outsiders who wanted to hurt the family. Therefore, it wasn't very difficult to deal with these individuals, as he could be as ruthless as he wanted. But then came the pivotal point where Michael needed to make the most difficult choice someone in his position would have to make. As this time, the person who wanted to hurt the family was actually someone within the family. This was Michael's biggest and most difficult test. Was Michael going to do what he knows is the right thing to do and try to give Fredo one last chance? Or was he going to follow the Mafia code and make an example of this traitor so that he doesn't risk the family even more? In the end, it seems Michael was blinded by the fact his own brother betrayed him, and that he had so much hate, jealousy, and such resentment towards him, that he had to do what a mafia boss should do. Michael slowly had began losing his entire purpose and goal of protecting his family. His ego and need for power made him lose focus of his principles that Vito had ingrained into him. Michael was not always doing what he thought was the moral decision, rather he was following the code of La Cosa Nostra. He used it as a guide to maneuver in that world where he really didn't have too much experience. Although he later regrets his actions, he still has to live with the consequences. They were the price he had to pay to be at the top. So in the end, Michael was able to become a powerful mafia don, surpassing everyone else, but at the cost of losing his soul and destroying everything else around him. So was Michael evil even though his intentions never were? Well, from a moral standpoint, yes. But from the perspective of a criminal boss, he was to an extent the perfect leader. Michael began as the hero, then once he entered the mafia, he transitioned into a tragic hero, then as he progressed, primarily after taking out his own brother Fredo, we see him completely transform into a villain. Although in his mind, he is the hero, who had to make these difficult decisions to save his family. But later on, the toll of his actions are too unbearable and realizes that he truly was evil. But Michael needed to become that ruthless don. However, he couldn't control it, which eventually led to his downfall.
Corleone.
That's my family, kid. It's not me.